The speaker presented some options to the conference this morning. Are you good keeping things where they are until November 21st?
I am. We want to make sure the government stays open. It is common sense as we're getting our economic rebound with the new bill that, of course, keeps taxes stable. We do not see a tax increase. And, of course, all the investment coming from overseas. We want to keep that momentum going. And I'm optimistic we can strike a deal. But Republicans are 100% committed to keeping the government open. We know how vital it is as we move forward.
Representative Haridopolos, some of your colleagues, I'll just name a few here, Representatives Massey, Burchett, Sparks, Davidson, even Green, have started to raise questions about this particular bill. Do you think you're going to get them across the finish line, or do you still need to appease some of the centrist Democrats that are holding out?
We're working under the assumption that Democrats simply want to shut the government down. You've heard Chuck Schumer's comments throughout the last few weeks. They want to play politics with it. We choose to keep the government open. I know that some of my colleagues in the House have some concerns, and that's always part of the internal discussion we're going to have. But that said, I'm committed to moving the government forward. I got elected to get things done. I'm happy to say that the border has been secured. And, of course, we passed the big budget bill back on July 4th, which finally offered certainty and stability to taxpayers. And another part of the process is to make sure we keep the government open as we look to lower interest rates and do other things to make sure that we stimulate this economy and send a message around the world that the United States is open for business.
Yeah, there's been some talk about maybe a longer-term conversation, Congressman. You get the CR out of the blocks, and to be able to actually get to the table with Democrats over the expiration of Affordable Care Act credits. Some have suggested that extending those might unlock a potential deal with your colleagues on the other side of the aisle. We've also seen polling, I believe it was from Tony Fabrizio, that the expiration of those credits could cause a lot of trouble for Republicans in the midterms. Where are you on that conversation now? Should that be the point of engagement with Democrats?
Well, I think more than anything else, we want to have a discussion with the American public about what this bill is and what it isn't. These credits are important to a lot of families, but we also want to make sure we have a level playing field for people who are buying insurance without the help of the federal government. So I think that will be one of the key points as we move forward. But let's be clear here. The Democrats want to shut the government down. They're in a total chaotic situation, and they think the only way to appease their base is probably to shut it down. What Mike Johnson has done as our speaker throughout the year has always been able to bring this caucus together to push some common sense forward. And, of course, the president has been leading that charge. And so I think we'll work this thing out. But, again, we have to work under the assumption, given the rhetoric from the Democrats for weeks now, that they're OK with shutting down the government. We're not. And we're going to do everything in our power in a common sense way to protect taxpayers to keep the government open.
Just to be clear, Congressman, does that mean that even though, as you mentioned, it's a key sticking point, is that's not necessarily the starting point when it comes to these discussions ahead of Thanksgiving?
Well, again, all I can say is I can't speak for others. And you know the in and out maneuvers that the Democrats have been talking about. But bottom line is they think that if you raise taxes and grow government, that somehow that's going to stimulate the economy. We happen to think differently. I always welcome conversations with the Democrats, but they need to put something up on the table. The American public was very clear last November. They wanted change in Washington. We've given them that change, and we've solved the problems on the border, and we solved the problems with the tax situation, which was very much uneasy. I mean, Bloomberg is dedicated to business, and the best thing the government can always do is offer certainty and stability to the business world. That's what we're trying to do. We hope that the Democrats don't throw in some kind of monkey wrench to mess this up.
Well, you know, we've heard from a lot of them, and I'd love to ask you about business and the Federal Reserve meeting that's starting today, Congressman. But just lastly, we've had Democrats, including Brendan Boyle, the top Democrat on the Budget Committee, explain that their concern boiled down to not just the debate over the big, beautiful bill, but the rescissions that followed, that there's a lack of trust between the two parties because monies agreed upon and appropriated were clawed back by Republicans. Do you see them on that front? What would be your response?
Well, it's a good question to ask, but let's be clear. The Democrats were absolutely OK, given how they voted, to raising taxes. I mean, if you looked at the big bill, they were OK with going back to the old tax rates, which on average would have been a 23% tax increase. I don't think that's a good thing for the economy. As far as rescissions bills are concerned, when you look at what we cut out of there, we're talking about NPR and PBS. That is not a vital government function. Remember, when I was growing up, there might have been 3 or 4 channels, but today there are hundreds of channels. with whatever people want to see. And so we don't need to be subsidizing those programs. And it was a message that we wanted to send out.
USAID, wasn't it?
How we worked that. Oh, the USAID is even clearer to me. I'm glad you asked, Joe. I mean, if anybody looks at this in a common sense lens, they're going to say, we spent money on that when we have a budget shortfall. I thought the USAID cuts were the most obvious ones to make, and I think we need to look further. And it's one of the reasons why I created a bill that we're looking at called the Ledger Act. It says everything should be out there. You should see exactly where all of your money is being spent, not just the top line, but the specifics within. That's what we did in Florida, and we're the most transparent state in the nation, and it turned around our economy. It's the reason why Rick Scott, our U.S. Senator, and of course myself, has pushed this bill with literally 70 co-sponsors in the House. We want to make the government more transparent so we don't have these bogus expenditures like we saw with USAID.
Congressman, we've also got one eye firmly on the Federal Reserve, as Joe had mentioned earlier. I just want to play with for you some sounds, some comments that the president had made earlier when it comes to the new appointee to the FOMC board, Stephen Myron. Just take a listen.
Thank you.
He'll have a big influence on this. When too late, getting his rates down, I guess. Who knows? You never know with too late, but he's done a lousy job. The rates should be much lower.
What do you think about the independence?
Oh, it should be, but I think they should listen to smart people like me. I think I have a better instinct than him. If you look, all the economists got it wrong. I got it right.
The president there speaking, of course, ahead of his departure to London. Congressman, he's making the case that rates should be significantly lower. Traditionally, when we hear rhetoric like that, it means that the economy is in trouble, that we're heading for recession. Do you see any signs of that?
Well, I think we all had concerns with the latest job reports, and the president has said we've been pushing for this for months. Unfortunately, the Fed board has been giving us kind of the runaround on that. But bottom line is this. I had Mr. Powell in the committee where I serve, on the Financial Services Committee where I serve as whip, and I asked him two fundamental questions. Did they make a mistake in the Biden years on the interest rates? He admitted, yes, we made a mistake. Second, I said, did the overspending in Washington also stimulate this inflation? He said yes. So with that in mind, when other nations are cutting their interest rates, we need to do the same here. Where I live in Florida, the difference between a 7% interest rate and a 3% interest rate on an average home where I live is $1,200 a month. That's $15,000 a year, and people can't afford it. That's the inflationary effect we want to get rid of. We want to tackle inflation by doing common sense things, by reducing spending and giving certainty to the economy, by keeping the government open and making sure that people know that the tax rate is stable now and they can make those investments long term.
It's got to be an interesting day in the room, Congressman. You've got Stephen Myron, first day on the job, presumably sitting next to Lisa Cook as they hash out this decision and review the data. Do you believe Lisa Cook should be fired?
Well, I think that facts speak for themselves, and we want people who truly understand the economy. It's the reason why I'm out in the real world every day talking to people who create jobs and opportunity, not just the folks here in Washington, D.C. And as you saw in the last meeting of the Fed, there was a split vote, which is very rare, as you know. I think that given the numbers that we're seeing right now, I think there's a good chance we'll get at least a quarter point, hopefully a little bit more, to help people who've been so hard hit the last 4 years with higher rent prices and gas prices. We want to help them out, and one way to do that is to help them on their mortgage payment.
I know you mentioned the facts speaking for themselves. Do you think she deserves due process in this case before she's fired or not fired?
Well, look, we always want to provide that, but also when you apply for jobs like this, you need to be honest. And clearly that was not the case. And I think that full transparency that I talked about earlier, Joe, that idea where government spending should be in the sunshine, we need to do that. But bottom line is the Fed needs to react to the markets, and the markets start telling them reduce interest rates.